This episode is brought to you by La Quinta by Wyndham. Your work can take you all over the place, like Texas. You've never been, but it's going to be great because you're staying at La Quinta by Wyndham. Their free Bright Side breakfast will give you energy for the day ahead. And after, you can unwind using their free high-speed Wi-Fi. Tonight, La Quinta. Tomorrow, you shine. Book your stay today at lq.com.
For decades, home ownership in the U.S. has been seen as a symbol of financial prosperity and stability. However, today, this American dream is crumbling as severe housing shortages plague several U.S. cities. Many employees can no longer afford to live near work as prices continue to rise, and they find themselves trapped in a paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. While this is the reality for many millions of Americans today, it didn't always used to be this way.
If you look at the past several decades of American history, pretty much the entire post-war period, when we think about what it means to be the richest country in the world, we have always used housing as our singular symbol of our prosperity and the breadth of our prosperity. For so long, people from Europe and elsewhere have come and seen and marveled that Americans live so well, that their homes are so big, and that they're full of so many creature comforts. We look at housing today, and it's a nightmare.
That's Connor Doherty, New York Times economic reporter and author of Golden Gates, Fighting for Housing in America. He says that over the last few decades, we've become a two-class economy, upper versus lower class. The middle class has dwindled away as more manufacturing jobs disappear and high-paying tech-based roles in computer science, engineering, and biotech take over. What's left for those who fall outside of the high-paying niche industries are many hourly wage service jobs.
It can be anything from people who teach gym classes and yoga to nannies and house cleaners and dog walkers and retail employees.
At the same time, as more middle-class jobs disappear and the divide between high-paying and low-paying jobs widens, housing prices are on the rise due to greater demand from those earning more. Because of this, many people who live in the same areas as big tech companies, or even work at them in lower-paid positions, can no longer afford the cost. Take the example of Silicon Valley, where Google and many of the other largest tech companies are headquartered.
These are the two poles of the economy. The service employees, since they are basically waiting on these people through services that they provide with some degree of human contact, have to live next to these knowledge jobs. So this is the structure of our economy. But our housing market looks nothing like this. We don't have anywhere near enough affordable housing for people on the lower income scale. And gentrification is basically just people at the higher end kind of going and claiming apartments and homes that used to be available to lower income families.
In effect, service workers must seek affordable housing far away from their work, resulting in daily commutes that are strenuous and inefficient.
We now have people who commute 2-3 hours to work. We have in San Francisco cops sleeping in their cars because they're so exhausted from the commute. We have teachers who perennially are quitting because they just can't handle the commute anymore. Our public services are truly falling apart because people who work in those jobs cannot afford to be anywhere near the city.
The obvious solution is to build more affordable housing within city limits. But despite the clear need for them, higher density housing units are often prohibited due to local zoning laws.
It is not surprising for anybody to hear that single-family zoning, which are rules that say you can only build single-family homes in this neighborhood, those exist everywhere. I think it varies from place to place, but generally speaking, about 3/4 of the landmass in cities, whether you're in Seattle or San Francisco or Denver, are set aside for neighborhoods that only have single-family homes.
Doherty says we need to rethink what a vibrant, diverse city looks like.
When we really ask ourselves how cities operate, how we have really high-income people living next to really low-income people, how we have cities where offices, where stock traders and tech employees work can be right above delis, where immigrants come and get their foothold in America through retail jobs.
So How do we get there? While not everyone agrees on the path, there are compromises to achieving affordable housing for all. It doesn't have to mean the demolition of historical brownstones or sudden construction of high-rise buildings.
In California, we just had a proposal for a law that would allow 4 to 8-story buildings within a half mile of any train stop. That would, if it had passed, but it didn't, have allowed people to build pretty substantial apartment buildings in neighborhoods that only have single-family zones.
In Chicago last month, the city decided to turn high-rise office buildings in the downtown financial district into residential housing. The plan is partially subsidized by taxpayer money because 300 of the 1,000 units will be set aside for low and moderate-income Chicagoans. Proponents of the plan say this not only creates more affordable housing, but reinvigorates an area that was heavily hit by the pandemic. Another idea that some towns have embraced is constructing smaller buildings known as accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, also called granny flats. Essentially, these are tiny homes built in already existing backyards.
Your standard typical house, the 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 2-car garage, 2-bathroom, is 1,200 to 2,000 square feet. And I'm calling a tiny home anywhere from around 150 square feet up to 800 square feet.
That's tiny homeowner Patricia Foreman, author of A Tiny Home to Call Your Own, Living Well in Just Right Houses.
I think there are more people who would like to live in smaller homes than there is the availability of smaller homes. Partly because zoning for small homes is very difficult. It was zoning and financing that pretty much put us out of business. Because people would come and they go, oh, yes, I can put this right there and my granddad can live close by, or a son or daughter, and then they'd go and check with their zoning and it wasn't allowed. Or it had to have so many setbacks, or it had to be attached to a duplex. So there's a lot that with conventional housing that rules against tiny houses.
However, as cities grapple with rising costs, more local governments are realizing that tiny homes can be one part of the solution in reducing housing inequality and gentrification. The San Diego City Council recently expanded options to include granny homes, which were formerly prohibited. Since then, requests for building permits for granny flats have increased 1,000% in the city. While the cost of tiny homes, or ADUs, can vary widely, they still add up to be far more affordable than most traditional options. Maybe the traditional American dream of a massive house with a large backyard, wooden porch, and white picket fence is outdated. Embracing a simpler way of life and moving into a smaller home surrounded by less stuff is just one solution to bridging this divide. Connor Doherty's book is Golden Gates: Fighting for Housing in America, and Patricia Foreman's book is A Tiny Home to Call Your Own, Living Well in Just Right Houses. Both are available online now. You can learn more about all of our guests by visiting our website at viewpointsradio.org. This segment originally aired in April 2020 and was written and produced by Polly Hansen. Our studio manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Marty Peterson.